Be'ezras Hashem, with Hashem's help, we begin the final set of laws in this book of the Rambam, Hilchos, Shmittah, v'Yovel. The laws of the Shmittah year and the Yovel year. Shmittah means sabbatical, it's every 7th year. We stop working the land in Israel. And Yovel means the Jubilee year, it's every 50 years, where we also do the same thing. We stop working the land, and there are other laws that apply during Yovel that deal with real estate and slaves, as we're going to learn in the end of these laws. So as the Rambam always does, he gives us the list of mitzvahs that are discussed in this set of laws. Yesh bichlalan shtayim ve'esri mitzvahs. There are included in these laws 22 mitzvahs out of the 613. Tesha mitzvahs aseh, u'shlesh esri mitzvahs leis aseh. 9 positive mitzvahs and 13 negative mitzvahs. V'zeo praton. And these are their details. Aleph, shetishbais ha'aretz bashvius mimalachta. The land should rest during the 7th year from its work. Beis, shelo yavod avodas ha'aretz b'shana zu. It's the same thing, negative commandment. The person should not work the work of the land this year. Or Gimel, shelo yavod avodas ha'ilan b'shana zu. You shouldn't work the work of a tree on this year. Dalid, shelo yiktzar ha'safiach kederech ha'kaitzrim. You shouldn't even harvest safiach. Safiach is like wild, things that grow wild. The way that harvesters usually cut them. Hey, shelo yivtzar ha'nezirim kederech ha'baitzrim. You shouldn't harvest fruits or grapes the way the normal harvesters will harvest them. And Vav, sheyeshamet mashatoitzi ha'aretz. You should, yeshamet kind of means like cancel or let go of, relinquish that which the earth produces. Even if the earth does produce wild growths during Shmittah, it's considered hefker, it's considered ownerless, and you have no claim to it. Zayin sheyeshamet kol halva asay. All loans should be relinquished or canceled during Shmittah. Ches shelo yigois v'lo yisba halayve. On the negative side, you should not oppress, is the literal translation. You shouldn't demand from your borrowers that they pay back their debts once Shmittah passes. Tes shelo yimana mila halvos koydem Shmittah kedei shelo ya'abid mamayna. Even though Shmittah is going to cancel the loans, there's an express prohibition against stopping yourself from lending before Shmittah just to save your money so you don't lose your money. Yud lisper ashanim sheva sheva. You should count, or the court should count the years by groups of 7. Yud aleph lekadesh nasa chamishim. After you have 49 years, 7 times 7, what do you have? A 50th holy year. The court has to sanctify the 50th year. Yud beis litkoya b'shofar ba'asara b'tishrei kedei latzis avodim chavshi. On the 10th day of Tishrei, Yom Kippur, of the Yovel year, we blow the shofar, like on Rosh Hashanah, to declare all slaves free. Yud gimel shleitei aved adama b'shana zu. During this year of Yovel, the land also should not be worked like during Shmittah. Yud dalet shelo yiktzar sficheha keneged ha'koitzrim. Tesvav shelo yivtzar nezireha kederech ha'baitzrim. Don't cut its aftergrowths of grain like harvesters would. Don't harvest its fruit like harvesters would. And Tezayin, we have some unique laws about Yovel, litin geula la'aretz b'shana zu, to proclaim liberty for the land in this year. V'zeu din sdei achuzos sdei mikna, which is the law that pertains to ancestral and bought fields that they return to their original owners during the Jubilee. Yud zayin shleitimacher ha'aretz litzmisus. The land of Israel, or no portion of it, may be sold forever. No such thing as an everlasting sale in Israel. Yud ches din batei arei chayma. The special law that applies to houses in walled cities, which is kind of like the opposite than regular fields. Regular fields, you have to wait at least 2 years. Then you can buy it back. And after Yovel, it goes back to the original owner. In cases of walled cities, you have 1 year to buy it back. If you don't buy it back during that year, it does get sold forever. Yutes shelo yinchal kol shevet Levi b'Eretz Yisrael. The tribe of Levi is not allowed to take an inheritance in the land of Israel. Rather, the rest of the Jewish people should give them gifts of land to dwell there. Chaf shelo yikach shevet Levi b'biza. The tribe of Levi should not take a portion in the spoils of war. Chaf aleph litin laleviim arim lasheves umnigreshen. We should give the Leviim cities to sit in, to dwell in, plus migrash. Migrash means an area outside of it that they can use for planting or just for, have a nice view. Chav beis shelo yimacher migrash areim. There, the surrounding areas outside their fields can never be fully sold. They can always buy their property back, whether before or after the Jubilee year. But those last mitzvahs about Jubilee are going to be at the very end of these laws. First, we deal with Shmittah, that's the core. of these laws. Ubir mitzvahs elu b'prakim elu. The explanation of these mitzvahs is coming in the following 13 chapters, God willing, be'ezras Hashem. Perek Rishon, chapter 1. We begin the laws of Shmittah. This is actually from today. You see these in Israel. We're going to learn throughout the chapters that there's different ways to avoid not having to work the land on Shmittah. But many farmers got together and decided that, you know what, even though there's ways to get out of it, we want to keep the mitzvah properly. And so they got together and they put up these massive signs outside their field that says, Kan Shomrim Shmittah. Here we keep Shmittah. And they literally don't touch the land for a full year. Things grow wild, people take stuff, and they mamish keep Hashem's mitzvah and they get blessings. Torah promises. No, you have to declare your fruit ownerless, but anyone else can come and take stuff from you. If all the wild stuff, exactly. Or all the things that you planted in the last year and are now growing during this year.
So just the owner suffers.
That's right. Even the owner can take some of the stuff home for what he needs for dinner, but you can't take for storage. Every day you can take, daily use you could take. We'll see all the laws. So let's begin. It says that Rambam Malacha Aleph Mitzvah Saseh. It's a positive commandment, lishbois me avodas haaretz va'avodas ha'ilan b'shana shvius, to rest from work of the land and work of the trees on the 7th year. So the Rambam over here seems to imply on the person. The person has to rest. Shenemar, then he brings the verse. What does the verse say? V'shavsa haaretz, Shabbos la'Hashem. The land needs to rest. A Shabbos, a sabbatical for God. V'nemar, it also says, b'charish u'va'katzir tishbois, you shall rest from plowing and harvesting, which this verse is interpreted to be talking about Shmittah, even though the original part of the verse, the beginning part, talks about Shabbos. Those are the two positive commandments. Any Jew who does work from the work of the land or work of the trees during this year, bitel mitzvah saseh, in addition to canceling the positive commandment, va'avar alei saseh, he also transgresses a negative commandment, a prohibition, because it says, sadcha lo yisizra, v'charmlecha lo yisizmar. You shall not plant your field, nor shall you prune your vineyards. So we have both a positive and a negative commandment. The Rabbi talks about it at length. There's a big discussion if the mitzvah is on the land or on the person, called gavra or chefza. Is it the person's obligation to not work the land, or the land's obligation to rest?
That's you lease your land to somebody.
Very good.
You don't have no control.
That's the exact difference. The difference between the two is, what if somebody else works your land? What if a goy works your land on Shmittah? So if the mitzvah is that you cannot work your land, and if a guy does it, it's fine. But if the mitzvah is that the land that you own cannot be worked, then even if somebody else works it, you're transgressing the mitzvah. And the Rebbe points to the fact that in Jewish literature, there's two reasons for why we keep Shmittah. One has to do with the land, and one with the person. The land is the reason that the Rambam gives in Meir Nevuchim. He says that it's a natural thing. Once every 7 years, you have to give your land a break, so it could be strengthened again for the coming round of agricultural cycles. But the Chinuch, who also gives reasons for each mitzvah, he says the reason is because it's about reestablishing in our hearts the belief in Hashem's creation, that 6 days He created, 7th day He rested, 6 years we work, 7th year we rest also. So that's talking about the person. So there's room for both, and it seems like from the Rebbe that the Rambam holds of both. Both elements are true. There's a mitzvah on the person, and also the mitzvah on the land. Definitely the negative commandments, though, are on the person. The positive commandment of resting could be on the land, but the negative commandment is for sure on the person. Halacha Bey says the Rambam, Ein eloika min haTorah. Biblically, you only get lashes, ella al hazriya, oy al hazmira, va al haktsira, oy al habitzira. You only get lashes for the 4 things that Torah clearly mentions: planting, pruning, like trimming trees, harvesting grain, and harvesting fruit. And even though the word bitzira means usually grapes, the Rambam says echad akerem ve'echad shara ilanis. It refers to both grapes, a vineyard, and any other tree. No harvesting fruits. Halacha Gimel, uzmira bichlal zriya, ubitzira bichlal ktsira. Every word in Torah is exact and precise. Now, pruning is part of planting, because pruning enhances the growth. Harvesting grapes is under the same umbrella as harvesting grain. So why did the Torah specify these prohibitions? Loimar lach, to tell you a special law. Al shtei tuldes elu bilvad hu chayav. It's only for these 2 derivatives that you're going to be obligated or liable biblically. Va'al shara tuldes sheba avodas haaretz im shar ha'avos shalei nisparshu be'inyan zeh. But any other derivative of working the land, which we're going to get a big list today, together with all the other avos, primary sources of work, that were not clarified specifically by Shmittah, but we learned them from Shabbos, let's say. You don't get lashes, you only get rabbinic lashes, because it doesn't say clearly in the Torah. And now we're going to go on to a huge list of different agricultural works. I tried to get pictures as best I could. I used AI for some of them, and we'll see what we got over here. Halacha Dalid Ketzad. What does this look like in detail? HaChoifer. So we begin. Hey, here we go. Choifer means somebody digs a hole. Oy hachoresh l'tzoyrech hakarka, or you plow, but you're plowing not for planting necessarily. You're plowing for the land. You want to break the ground so it should be nice and soft. Oy ha-misakil, or you remove stones. This is misakil. They have these massive, many times in fields they're full of stones. You take a tractor, you have to go through it and grab all the stones. Oy ha-mizabil, or you put fertilizer, as this guy is doing. B'chayetze behen, and anything like it. Mish'ar avodas ha'aretz, from any other of the works of the land. V'chein ha-mavrich, same thing if you do this, layering. You take a tree and you put it into the ground. It's called mavrich because berech means a knee. I think about a knee. It's bent. So you take a tree and you're layering it. Oy hamarkiv, or you're grafting. This is grafting. You take a branch of one tree, you put it into another tree. Oy haneteya, or you simply plant the tree. There you go. Takes a sapling, he's planting a tree. V'chayetze behen me'avodas ha'ilanos, or anything else that constitutes work of a tree. We are going to give him lashes, rabbinic lashes, but not biblical lashes, because these are all things that are not clear in the Torah. Oh, here was the picture of the pruning that I missed before. This is planting, pruning, harvesting, and harvesting grapes. Okay, that's the 4 biblical acts that are forbidden, and these are the first 4 that the Rambam gives the example of as rabbinic prohibitions. Halacha hey, ein noitin bashvius afilu ilon srak. You cannot plant a tree in Shmittah, even if it's a non-fruit bearing tree. No fruit's going to come out of it. Still forbidden. You cannot cut off what's called today a tree wart. Look at this. Many times on trees, these warts, these unhealthy things grow, and part of taking care of a tree is that you have to cut them off. But you can't do this during Shmittah. That's called tree working. You cannot cut off excess dry leaves. Try getting dry leaves over here. They don't exactly work so much over here. But many times there's a big tree that grows a lot of leaves, and excess leaves grow that become dry. And if you don't cut them off, they get in the way of the other fruit growing properly. So you can't do that. I'm translating this according to one opinion in the Rambam's clarification. You cannot pour dust on the top of the tree. Samarta is the top of the tree. So here we have, thanks to AI, guy's on his cherry picker, he's pouring dust on top of the tree. That's forbidden.
What's the use of it?
What's the point? The Rambam writes in his Pirush HaMishnayos that it was beneficial for certain trees. Doesn't explain more.
It protects it.
Huh? Maybe it protects it. Yeah.
And things like that.
V'lo ya'ashin tachtav, no fumigation. Ya'ashin is to fumigate a tree. You blow smoke at the bottom of the tree, kedei sheyamus hatelas, to kill all the worms, the parasites that are eating at the tree's roots. V'lo yasuch es hanetiyos b'davar sheyesh lo zuhama. Nor should you, here it is, you smear the tree. They would do this usually to younger trees, but here's even on a big tree. You smear it with this disgusting, it smells disgusting, really bad smelling stuff. It's to protect it so birds shouldn't eat it when it's soft. You cannot smear figs with oil. This, back in the day, oiling figs was believed to bring them a quicker ripening. If figs fell off a tree that didn't become ripe, you would smear them with oil, and even today, I read up that they're actually used today. I don't know how to exactly pronounce the word. Maybe I'll ask Google over here. Oleification. Oleification is the name for this process. They do it even today. Today, it's obviously on a mass production scale. They can roll them down this conveyor belt where it all gets oiled up, and it ripens it quickly. You also cannot make holes in a. Is this it? No. You also cannot make holes in a fig. Same thing. They would take a needle, smear it with oil, and you would puncture the fig, so the oil would go inside it, and that would also quicken the ripening process. You cannot bind young plants. They would do this like this when young trees were growing, and you wanted the branches to grow upwards instead of outwards. So you tie them down, and they all grow up. That cannot be done on Shmittah. V'lo yiktaim oisam. You cannot trim the tops or the edges of branches. This is yiktaim. V'lo yefaseg es ha'ilanois. So I think this is the best I came up with over here. Sometimes when a tree was too supple, it means that too much sap is in it. It gets super, super heavy. If you don't support it, so the branches begin to kind of just collapse. Yeah. So they build these things under a branch that's extending and becomes too full to hold it up. That's the way we're going to translate v'lo yefaseg es ha'ilanos. Others say that yefaseg has to do with cutting off fresh leaves, not dry leaves. But this is the accepted translation over here. No supporting overly supple trees. V'chein sha'ar kol aveidas ha'ilan. These are a bunch of examples, but the truth applies to all other works related to trees. If you did any of these during Shmittah, you get rabbinic lashes because they're not mentioned in the Torah, but they are prohibited rabbinically. Halacha vav. Ein matzisen esa'ur be'isha sarkanim. You cannot set fire to a thicket of reeds. This is done as part of farming. Too many reeds, too many weeds, you set fire to them, they all burn, and then they're easy to take away. Mipnei aveidas karka. The Rambam says this is a work of the land. It's not allowed. You cannot train a cow to plow, only in the sand. You can't use actual earth to train a cow to plow because you're also benefiting the ground at the end of the day. You can't test drive. If you have some seed, you want to test if they're going to grow. So you have here, this is flower pots full of soil. If you test seeds, it's like planting. But you could check them over here in a flower pot full of manure, full of dung. Because that, as the commentaries say over here, since you don't usually plant in manure, so you're allowed to test with it on Shmittah. You can soak seeds on Shmittah if you're preparing them to plant after Shmittah. Part of making seeds germinate easier is if you hydrate them, if you soak them in water. So even though technically you're preparing for after Shmittah, but it's only going to be done after Shmittah, not during Shmittah itself. And during Shmittah, this act has no benefit to the land. So it's allowed. You can keep aloe. This is the aloe plant. If it grows on the top of a roof, you can keep it there. But you cannot water them. Watering them is promoting the growth. It's enhancing the growth, not just maintaining the growth. How do you maintain the growth? Maintain the growth, the commentaries say, you can build a little box around it to protect from the sun or extreme weather. But you can't actively take care of it. Halacha zayin, soikir nesa'ilan besikra. You can paint trees with red paint. The Rambam writes, believe it or not, that they used to do this as a sign for Jews to pray for the trees. If you had a tree whose fruit used to fall off early, you would paint it with red paint, and any Jew who walked by would say a little tefillah, say a little prayer for your tree, that the fruits shouldn't fall. They should keep the fruits.
Save the trees.
Save the trees. It has no farming benefit. Therefore it's allowed. You can also load up a tree with stones. Also, they do this even today. You have a tree whose fruits are falling off prematurely. If you put weights on the tree with stones, it weakens the tree. And when the tree is weaker, somehow it stops the branches from releasing the fruit off the tree. But again, there's no direct farming benefit, so it's allowed. And you can hoe under vines. Here's a guy, under a vine he's hoeing. If you hoe, mekashkesh and idur is the same terminology, just one for grapes, one for olives. If you hoe under an olive tree, if it's to make the tree healthier, also that's forbidden. But if you're just trying to seal the cracks, there's some cracks opened up by the roots, and if you don't seal the cracks, the tree is going to die. So you can do that because you're not promoting the growth, you're just maintaining the tree. Halacha ches, mashkin beis hashlachim bashvius. You can irrigate a beis hashlachim. This is a very dry field. Beis hashlachim means v'hizdei hazriya shetzmeya b'yaiser. It's a planting field that's super thirsty because there's no natural rainwater there. So basically it fully relies on irrigation. So you can irrigate that field on Shmittah. And also a tree field, if you have a field that has a bunch of trees growing in it, so im hayu meruchakin zeh mizeh yeser me'eser lebeis sa'ah. Okay, this is not mamish the picture that I wanted, but let's just imagine. Okay, you have an area of 50 by 50 amas, that's called a beis sa'ah. It's an area where you can plant a sa'ah of grain. If there are more than 10 trees per 50 by 50 amma area, yeser means, no, if the 10 trees are scattered in more than an area of a beis sa'ah, there aren't even 10 trees in a beis sa'ah, you can channel the water from one tree to the next, but not watering the entire field. But if they're close to each other, 10 per beis sa'ah, mashkin kol asada bishvila, and you can water the entire field just for those 10 trees. V'chein ofar halavan, and also if you have, they translate over here as dirt in a tree field that are far from each other. In other words, the first case. So the dirt of that field, the soil of that field, marbitzin nesa b'mayim b'shvius, you can sprinkle it. Not fully water it, you can sprinkle it with water on Shmittah, b'shvil ha'ilane shelo yipasdu, for the trees that should not get destroyed. Again, as long as you're not promoting growth, you're just maintaining, it's okay. Tes v'oisin ugiyos lagfanim. You can make round ditches. This is an ugiyos, around vines. It's like it helps the watering system. You can make those round ditches. V'oisin es amas hamayim betchila. You can even create an irrigation ditch during Shmittah, and you can fill your water reservoirs with water. Right? They have these things next to big fields where you fill up a bunch of water. It's not part of a natural water resource. You just fill it up, and then you use that to irrigate the nearby fields or whatever. So these water channels and these water reservoirs can be filled up during Shmittah. Says the Rambam Malacha Yud, why are all these things allowed? These watering of these dry fields and these ditches, because if you don't water the field, the land is going to become so dry that all of the trees are going to die. Since the whole prohibition on these things is only rabbinic, the rabbis never decreed in these cases, we don't have to make your trees die. Don't promote the growth, but you can maintain it. Because the only biblical prohibited things are the two primary sources and the two derivatives of harvesting and planting and pruning and harvesting fruit, as we explained. When there were too many terrorists, okay, forceful people, and also the Gentile kings used to force the Jews to create food for their soldiers. The rabbi has made a special dispensation to plant during Shmittah whatever the king's house needs. Otherwise, they would confiscate the fields. And then you have nothing left. Non-Jewish kings, yeah. So too, if it's some kind of terrorist or blackmailer forced you to do work on Shmittah for free, for work of the king, so you can do it because, again, the consequences are much more severe than what you're going to be doing now, and if it's only rabbinic anyways, it's okay. If somebody does plant a tree on Shmittah, he didn't mean to, or maybe he did mean to, he planted a tree. Whether you did it inadvertently or purposely, you must uproot it. Because unfortunately, Jews are suspect when it comes to Shmittah. It's very hard to keep Shmittah, and there's a lot of reason for you to do the wrong thing. If you would allow somebody who did it inadvertently to keep his trees, every purposeful guy would say, hey, I did it by mistake, and I can keep it. If somebody plows his field, nora also usually means plowing, so the commentaries differentiate to say that nora is much less thorough. It just breaks the ground, doesn't fully plow it. Or you fertilized it. during Shmittah, but you did these things not for any purpose during Shmittah, rather, you want it to be nice and ready to plant after Shmittah. I say, we fine him, we penalize him, and we don't allow him to plant it after Shmittah. We don't even lease it. Not only you. In other words, nobody can lease the land to plant it. Let it stay unplanted in front of him. He loses it completely. And if he dies, though, his son can plant it. We don't find the son over the father's sins. Similar concept. Person is taking away thorns. Thorns can get really annoying in agricultural societies. You must remove the thorns. So he's removing thorns during Shmittah to have it fixed for after Shmittah. Or he removes stones, again, with the purpose of doing it for after Shmittah. Even though it's not allowed, so I say they didn't penalize him, and you can plant it after Shmittah, because you didn't do an act to the land itself. You just took away a stumbling block, a potential problem. Tezvav, before refrigeration days, this was the way they would preserve these radishes and turnips. They would, after they picked them, they would bury them back in the ground. So if you bury them back in the ground on Shmittah, if some of the leaves were open above ground, no need to worry. But if not, it's forbidden because it could look like planting. If you bury in the ground a luf, we had a bunch of times, it's either what's called the taro, colocasum, anticorum, whatever Latin word, or it's this one, the Arum palestinium, has a berry. One of these two had the luf plant, and you would bury them in the ground to preserve them. If you do so, lo yifches me'arba kavim al goiva tefach, betefach ofar al gabav. You can put no less than 4 kav, it's a volume measurement, at the height of a tefach, but a handbreadth, plus a tefach, a handbreadth of dirt has to be on top of it. And you must bury it in a place where people walk, so that it doesn't ever regenerate. I never knew this till I looked this up. Rice many times grows in what's called paddies, rice paddies. And they will water it to the point where there's literally a full puddle on top of the rice plants. And then lemares is like you mix around the water and it softens the plants, gets them ready for growth. So that's what's allowed over here. You're allowed to mix a rice paddy on Shmittah, avaloi yichsach, but you cannot cut any of the rice stalks. So things around the plant is allowed. The plant itself, dealing with it, that's not allowed. Tezai. Initially, they used to say, Melakit adam eitzim va'avonim va'asavim miteich sadeyu, v'hu sheyitel hagas. That a person, they used to say, a person is allowed to gather wood chips and stones and grasses from his field as long as he takes the big ones only. So you don't intend to clean the land. Big ones, they're just big annoying stuff, so you can take them, but not the small ones. If you're helping your friend, you can take whatever you want, thin ones or thick ones. But then too many sinners came around. They wanted to really clean out their fields, but they would say, I'm just taking the big ones. So then, the rabbis forbade taking anything from your field, claiming any ownership, even the big ones, only from your friend's field. So long as you don't pick to get a favor exchange, right? I'll pick your field, you pick mine. You can't tell your friend, look how much good I did for you, I cleaned your field, get the hint, come to my field, clean up my field. No. If your animal was standing in the middle of your field, you can pick stuff from around and bring it to your animal. Because your animal proves that you're not picking the stuff to clean the field, you're just trying to feed your animal. If you had an oven in the middle of your field, making a barbecue, like you can gather wood chips from around to light the fire, because the range, the oven, proves that your intent is not to grow, it's not to clean your field, but to cook food. A person chops down a tree, 1 or 2 trees, just for wood. You're allowed to cut them off up to the root. Take out the roots as well is fine. Kitzetz shloisha or yeser zeh b'tzad zeh. If you cut 3 or more trees, one next to another, lo yesharesh. No taking out of the roots is allowed. Sharei misaken es haaretz, because you are fixing the land when you do that. Elo koitzetz me'al haaretz umaniach sharasha ba'aretz. You can cut off the top of the land, above the ground, leave the roots in the ground. Again, only prohibited in your property. But from your friend's field, you can pick up the trees with the roots, because again, you have no prohibition of fixing his land, only yours. Yutes hamavakeya bazayis lital eitzim. A person is chopping off branches from an olive tree just to get some wood. Lo yechape mekema bikua ba'afar. You cannot cover the place that you chopped off with dirt to help the recovery, because it's work of the land. But you can cover it with stones or with straw. If a person mizanev, here's mizanev, he trims the end of vine branches, or he cuts reeds off the ground. He can cut as he wishes, using an axe, a sickle, or a saw, whatever you want. That's not considered enhancing the growth. Chaf Aleph, ein koitzitzin besulas shikma bashviis kederech shekoitzitzin b'shar hashanim. Shikma is either a wild fig tree or a sycamore tree. This is a sycamore tree. People used to, as part of the growth of a sycamore tree, when it grew the first time, you would cut it down purposefully so that it would grow again stronger and bigger and better. So you cannot cut down this tree on Shmittah like you cut it down any other year, because the cutting is the work of the tree. Through the cutting, it's going to grow again and add more. But if you also happen to need the wood, you can cut it to get the wood, but not the normal way that would usually be done to the tree. So how do you indeed cut it? Either fully in line with the ground, or at least 10 handbreadths above the ground. Usually a stump, you leave it kind of in between there, maybe 5 tfachim from the ground. Here you got to go raise it to the ground, or 10 tfachim above the ground. Ilan shenifshach, if a tree begins to crack, it happens many times when the tree divides into a V, and then the branches begin to crack downwards. You can tie it up during Shmittah, not to mend it, not to fix it, but to stop further cracking. Again, the idea being, enhancing is forbidden. Maintaining the current situation is allowed.